Hughes House was listed on the National Register in 1976, in its original location in the rural hamlet of Rocky Mount. It was moved in 1995 to its present location in the small town of Benton. It is a single-story frame Greek Revival building constructed in 2 stages, around 1840 and in 1850. Even with the move and 20th century alterations, the Hughes House retains its National Register eligibility. Originally, the Hughes House was located in a rural setting in the hamlet of Rocky Mount. It was in a roughly 2-acre clearing in a wooded area and stood about 50 feet from the highway. Other structures in Rocky Mount included a 20th century school, a church, and a handful of residences. The Bossier Restoration Foundation was established in April of 1966. This nonprofit organization formed to restore the Hughes House. 10 years later, the house was placed on the National Register of Historic Places, the first such listing in Bossier Parish. Volunteers opened the house for tours and plans were made for future improvements. In the years following its National Register listing, the Hughes House was a house museum, although not a heavily visited one. This museum was abandoned in the late 1980s, and the vacant house began to deteriorate. By 1995, its deterioration was advanced. The Bossier Restoration Foundation was concerned that the house would fall victim to demolition by neglect. It became clear that in such a remote location it was impossible to secure and maintain a house that was not occupied. The Restoration Foundation reluctantly concluded that the only viable preservation alternative was to move the house to a more accessible and secure setting. The move was accomplished in 1995, with the house being split into 2 sections. It was moved about 15 miles to Benton. Today's members of the Bossier Restoration Foundation are excited to share the history of the Hughes House and the other buildings here at the Benton Heritage Village with us for this video.
Hello and welcome to Heritage Village in Benton, Louisiana. And we are standing on the site of the former courthouse for Bossier Parish. In 1972, that building was demolished and a new building was constructed about 3 miles from here to accommodate the growing area. So we just had a blank piece of ground here, and the school board is right next door, and so they decided that they would buy this property, and some of the PTA groups in Bossier Parish decided that they would like to move an old one-room schoolhouse here and showcase how children went to school back in pioneer days. So that was done. They furnished it with books, textbooks, and school desk, and even a wood-burning stove. And we have that completely furnished and is available to see later in the tour. Right now we're in a building that is called the Hughes House, and it's named for one of the pioneering families in Bossier Parish. It was also located at Rocky Mount because that was the hub of activity in Bossier Parish at that time. Around 1995, a group of historically minded citizens decided that they would like to move the Hughes House from Rocky Mount to Benton and to begin a heritage village with other houses here. So we now have a one-room schoolhouse, a Dogtrot house, a log cabin built in 1884. We know all about the man who built that log cabin. We have a movable plantation kitchen. We have a blacksmith shop, and we have a converted corn crib, which all farms had. Would you like to come inside with me and see some of the rooms that we've furnished? The first 2 rooms of this Dogtrot house, and there are a total of 6 rooms, but the first 2 rooms were the original building and were actually the overseer's office on a plantation, on the Stewman and Hughes plantation. Again, that family name, Hughes. But for the next 25 years after it was built in 1840, this house was used for many things. At one time, this was a doctor's office. Another time it was a general store. And then after the Civil War, Captain William Josiah Hughes came home from the war and asked Mary Clark to marry him. And they asked the uncle if he would let them use this 6-room Dogtrot as their home. And they did prepare it as a home. The reason that we use this as a dining room is because it was probably also a meeting room during the time it was used as an overseer's office and a doctor's office. In order to keep these old houses in repair, there is a volunteer organization called the Bossier Restoration Foundation. It's a nonprofit organization, and many people of Bossier Parish belong to it and help us monetarily each year in order to keep things the way that they were.
Okay, what we're standing in now is called the Dogtrot. It was a feature architecturally in the 1800s, and it not only joins both sides of the building, but it serves a function. You will notice there is a breeze. For the hot summer nights, the children might have slept out here with the parents. The wife would be out here doing her household chores, whether it was mending or shelling peas or whatever, and keeping an eye on her children. The name Dogtrot, and that's D-O-G, if you didn't understand me, was because the dogs would use this as a pass-through to get from the front to the backyard. If you'll take a look at the columns out here on the porch, 5 of them are original to the building. The other 4 were remade sometime in the 1970s. Only a true historic architect would be able to tell which are the original and which are the reproductions.
My name is Linda Jones, and I am one of the docents for Heritage Village. This room is known as the formal parlor. It was used by Mr. and Mrs. Hughes. This was where they raised their children. They had 4 children after he bought the home from his uncle. The room is furnished in period furniture of the Victorian era. You can see that we have a lovely sofa here that was purchased from the Tidwell estate. It's one of 3 antebellum homes remaining in Bossier Parish. And we were fortunate to be able to get that when one of the owners had a sale. We also have a lovely square and unusual piano with a stool, a matching stool. And this was used by the family for entertainment. It also has removable legs, which was used when settlers came west. They removed the legs to put it on the wagon. We have a wood-burning fireplace. It's a double-sided fireplace. That's what was used to heat these homes. Wood-burning, and you notice there's a spittoon next on the fireplace. We know what that was used for. The lighting was provided by candles and kerosene lamps. This room is the master bedroom of the house, and as you enter this room, you have a lovely view of the flower garden through the window. This room has been furnished with a East Lake style bed and matching marble top dresser. It's covered with a hand crocheted coverlet as well as embroidered linen on the bed. The flooring is also covered by a lovely hand-hooked rug that was donated to us. There is a late 1800s pine armoire that completely disassembles for travel, and it was used as a closet for the family's clothing. On the marble top dresser, you will see a pitcher and basin as well as a mirror, and these were used for freshening up. Also on the dresser we have hat pins where the ladies used to secure their hats so they wouldn't fly off. This is a lovely room, and as you can see, it also contains the other half of the fireplace, which was used for heating. This room we refer to as the children's room, and it was used for a playroom as well as a bedroom for the children of the house. As you can see on the wall, it was made of shiplap construction, and we have peeled back the wallpaper to show the construction, and you can even see different layers over the years of the wallpaper that hung there. Cheesecloth was tacked to the boards, and then wallpaper was glued to the cheesecloth, and that is how they covered their walls. Some of the furnishings in the room, we have several children's toys. There's a doll cradle with period dolls and clothing. We have a buggy, a Victorian buggy with another doll. We have a model of a little boy and how he might be dressed for the era. He has a bag of marbles tied to his belt, and he has a hoop, and that's what they did for fun. They had a hoop with a stick. We have a couple of authentic tops, a metal tricycle with a teddy bear, and this is a desk that would have been used like one in a school with a slate, which is what they use for writing. We also have a working loom in this room. Sometimes when we have demonstrations during festivals, we will have someone demonstrate the loom. We also have several pieces of period clothing that are displayed on models throughout the house. On the dresser, we have it's called a stereo viewer. It's really an early model of a Viewmaster, and you can use it to look at pictures, and it makes a scene. It's very interesting, and we have a nice collection of corn husk dolls that were made by a local ladies organization and donated to it. And this is something that children would have made to play with. Corn husks were readily available, and we think that's a nice addition to the children's room.
Okay, what we're standing in now is considered the travelers' rooms. Travelers' rooms were unique to southern homes because it was so rural. What it was there's only one entrance and no entrance into the house. Anybody passing through could stop for the night, pull his saddle and saddlebags into the room. You will notice that there is no fireplace here because they didn't want him to get too comfortable. So it was, you stopped for the night and you moved on, all right? The bed here, if you've heard the expression, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite, you would tighten this rope bed, okay, with the ropes so it didn't sag, all right? And the expression, the bed bugs, your mattresses would be stuffed with straw, feathers, Spanish moss. So gosh knows what's in that mattress. You can actually, if you press down on it, hear what you're pressing on that crunches under your press.
Hello, welcome to the Heath Log Cabin. This cabin also came from Rocky Mount, and it was moved here in 2003. It was built in 1884 by Thomas Heath. Thomas was also known as Buddy, and he was engaged to Ida Stroud, and he had to build her a home. So he built this log cabin by hand with an adze, a froe, and an axe, if you can imagine building it. It did have 2 additional rooms, but whenever it was moved here from Rocky Mount, they could not be repaired, so it did not get moved. They had 9 children that lived in this house, 8 girls and 1 boy. Can you imagine how spoiled that boy was? They said that, of course, this was the original, and the 2 rooms were right here, but in this room right here, there was an upstairs, and the kids lived up in the upstairs. And there, right now, we have the bedroom is here, and then we have the kitchen on this side. And then we have other buildings out here. This is what's called a traveling kitchen. This was on a plantation in South Bossier Parish on a 1,000-acre plantation. And what they would do is they would put logs underneath the bottom, and then they would pull it with oxen and pull it all around the plantation So whenever the cook would cook, he would have the kitchen right there. Another thing too, this is our blacksmith shop. This material came from an old cabin and was donated by the family, and we built the blacksmith shop. And the other building is what's called the corn crib. That came from a plantation on the corner of Kingston and Airline, Palmetto. And that's, we've got that, and that buckboard, we just got that from off of Sligo Road. They donated that to us just a few years ago. So that's our log cabin.
This is a one-room schoolhouse with grades 1 through 11. So the teacher taught those grades. There was only 11 grades in school at that time. And they were all, that's the reason you see different sized desks. And they were all in the same school, same grade. And the teacher was the authority. She could discipline, she could do anything with the kids. They had wood in the heater, and their lunches were in that little can. That's where the kids carried their lunches, and the water was in the bucket, in the pail. The schools, these schools were phased out in the 30s, and so they moved it here. And it was at Rocky Mount up there by the school up there. And the kids love the books. We have all these books that were donated, and so they love going through the books.